Welcome to the Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for choosing to join into this week's episode. Now, in this week's episode, we're going to look at a brilliant technique for softening up really hard demarcations or long regrowth lines where it's really solid in the hair. For me, it's the juxtaposition between taking the highlights back up towards the roots and pulling down the darker colour in between. Lots of clients, in my experience at the moment, are looking for lower maintenance, softer grow outs because they've lived through a lockdown with a solid line slowly travelling down their head. So they're wanting something much more straightforward. And for me, that's a fantastic thing. I'm totally up for that. So hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, then please hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. There's lots of content coming to the channel each and every week. And don't forget, if you want more Life of Hair experience, a deeper insight into my thoughts, feelings and the way that I work, then please become a Patreon, link down in the description. Until next week, look after yourself, guys. See you soon. Here we have the starting point of this particular look. Quite a strong demarcation, not really heavy, but noticeable, especially when the hairs. What we want to do here is we want to create contrast, dimension. We want to kind of dissipate that line. Also want to kind of blonde it up a bit. It's a little bit warm. It's just grown out, and it's definitely seen better days. So here we are with a technique that I don't do or talk about very much, and I'm actually using a very specific comb for this technique, one from YS Park. It's links in the description down below, and it's a backcombing comb, and the reason I'm using it is because this hair is particularly slippery, and I don't know if you've ever experienced that when you've gone to backcomb somebody's hair, and it's very slippery and it doesn't glide. The hair doesn't glide back up to the root area, and you don't disperse enough hair, and then you can leave yourself with kind of heavy unblended results because you didn't get enough hair traveling back up to the roots. So this is where that comb comes in really handy. I've seen Guy Tang use it previously as well, so I think it's a firm favorite with certain hairdressers. Now, you've probably just seen me put a clip in. We're going to talk a bit about that later on. There's plenty of time to get into those things, so don't worry about it. Just stay with me, and we're just going to focus on the kind of backcombing element just right now. Because the backcombing element is something that a lot of people kind of fear, or they don't want to put backcombing into the hair because they're worried that it's going to create lots of difficult padding to remove. The trick is to do as least amount of strokes as humanly possible, but always remember that if you don't do enough and you don't push enough hair back up to the roots, you're going to create some very hard lines in the hair, which you really don't want to do. So if it requires more strokes, make them long, smooth strokes starting from the ends of the hair, working back towards the root area. Those long smooth strokes are not like the padding that we would create for an up hair, for instance. They're more just pushing the hair that lives in the ends of the hair back towards the root area and helping us to disperse any hard lines that would be created from saturating the bleach onto the hair. So hopefully that gives you a better insight. When it comes to removing this backcombing, it's no dramas at all because you really didn't pack it in at the roots. You just simply were gliding the hair back towards the root area. And that's really important for me because obviously you don't want the client to be in huge discomfort while you remove an enormous amount of backcombing from their hair. You want it to be a seamless transition. I really like air touch balayages that I did a couple of weeks ago for that reason, that there is no backcombing to remove, and it's very simple and straightforward to kind of execute the removal of this technique. But there are times for me where this backcombing technique does come into play. I think it's a bit faster for me in general. I know there are faster air touch techniques. Thank you to some of the commenters who have pointed out some express air touch techniques for me to look at, and I will get around to it when I've got some time. But I do use backcombing techniques, especially when I want highly blended balayage techniques, and I want to fully saturate the ends, and that's really important. Now obviously I'm not doing every single section in this particular look. I am taking about 1-inch sections, splitting that 1-inch section, taking about 5 or 6 millimeters off the top of that 1-inch section, and then I'm saturating the hair really heavily to get the maximum lightness. Now, lots of people would argue that this is not a balayage, and I would agree with them. It's not a balayage. We're not hand painting, we're not blending, we're not sweeping. We're creating a lived-in blonde effect that was akin to what we would expect from a balayage. But the biggest difference here is that we're utilizing foil to create the maximum lift on the hair. That is really, really important to remember, guys, because when we want to lift the hair more than 3 levels lighter, we really do need to make sure that we are using the appropriate technique. Techniques where we're sweeping onto the hair, you're really only aiming for maximum 4 levels of lift if you're going to allow it to air process. If you're going to cover it with clean film or foil, you may get more than 4 levels of lift out of it. But if you're doing a traditional French balayage technique, they're not designed to go really light. They're designed to create lighter pieces in the hair to create contrast, separation, and ultimately make the hair look like it's been lightened by the sun. But not very often do you go from a level 5 all the way up to a level 10 utilizing a balayage technique, nor does the sun make you that light. Now obviously we're not working level 5 hair here, but I'm wanting guaranteed maximum lift. So I am utilizing this specific technique. So hopefully that helps you understand a few of the ins and outs and the whys and the wherefores of me using this particular technique. And it will help you understand a little bit more how you can best utilize techniques going forward. So this specific hair texture, as I mentioned, is very, very slippery. So when I am working with my backcombing technique, it isn't sliding to the root and staying at the root very well. So that's where the clip has been coming into action. What I do is backcomb towards the roots, place a metal clip in, and then push the metal clip back in towards the roots. If the section's quite fine, then it's a-okay for the section to not need the clip because it's a very fine piece of hair and it will backcomb absolutely perfectly and look absolutely seamless. But if it's a slightly thicker section in that 5 to 7 mil range that I was previously doing, that can bunch up at the roots, and as you start to paint down the hair, you start to pull out the backcombing that you've just created. That can be next to disastrous if you haven't allowed for the fact that you've pulled down that backcombing. Not only will the colour that you've applied be further down the head, but you won't necessarily have the backcombing in the hair to achieve the desired result. So it's really, really important that you really pad that back towards the root, utilise the clip to hold that backcombing in towards the root area. And remember, you're not creating padding, you're just creating a pad of hair at the roots for it to be able to transition back down as smoothly as you could hope for when you've backcombed someone's hair. Remember also, the vigorous backcombing can create cuticle damage, so we're only using very slow, very smooth movements to limit the damage of backcombing also. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. As we work through these sections, as you've noticed, I'm just working horizontally straight up the head, and I'm leaving around an inch gap in between each of my sections. And the main reason for that is that I want some contrast and definition in at that root area. I don't want every single piece of hair that goes right back up to the root to be blonde. I want that separation from the dark colour underneath, because that's ultimately what makes the blonde pop that lays on top of it. So quite often I see techniques from people when there's a lot of blonde and there's no contrast, and it's the pieces of hair you don't paint quite often are the most important pieces. It's easy just to throw colour at hair and just paint everything, but it's more difficult to be concise about which bits you don't paint and how that's going to overall affect the look. You're going to see in a minute that I'm going to utilize a fantastic technique, one that I just love to do, whether it be in the style that you're about to watch or whether it be a traditional tinting style, that just creates that beautiful definition and separation at the root, which really kind of creates highly blended, beautiful results, but not necessarily with the idea of kind of turning someone's hair darker. Because quite often, you'll probably know that if you've had a client with blonde hair for a very, very long time, if they want that softer, more diffused look, they quite often still want some lightness back up to the roots, because if you did them all dark, they would feel quite drab and dreary. So, you know, by pushing those highlights further up towards the root area with this specific technique that we're watching, and then dragging down that natural colour further down the head, well, this is what's going to help to transition them away from being so blonde. You know, because I have found, and I'm sure you will have too, that some people have come in saying that they wanted these softer, more lived-in blonde effects, but actually when you do their hair like that, I think they kind of miss how they used to be. And I'm seeing people coming back now saying, can we go a bit brighter than I was previously? But you know, that's okay too, each to their own. But I feel like if you do those highlights back up to the roots, they're less likely to be disheartened with the end results. So we're onto the top panel now. We're taking a rectangle section through this top panel. You'll notice I've switched combs. I'm back to my traditional highlighting tail comb, and I am doing a kind of money piece effect around the face. So traditional foil technique, and just gently diffusing some very, very fine pieces around the face. First section here is a slice that is absolutely bang on the front hairline. The very, very first one for me needs to be absolutely on the hairline. You don't want to leave a shadow of dark hair in front of that very, very first section. Subsequent to that, we've taken another fine slice of hair about 2 millimeters back from that first section that we took, and we've weaved this section, so a slice and then a weave. Very, very simple. I'll just tell you quickly, for anybody that's interested, how I fold my foil. I put the matte side facing me, I fold it over the pintail comb. That creates a flap at the back. Push the flap into the bottom of the hair, and then I fold by a third again, and then I push the flap in to secure. We're going back to the back combing technique, but we're doing it on a much finer basis. So we're taking very fine slices, pushing the hair back towards the root area, but then we're trapping that hair again with our metal clip, because this hair is particularly slippery, if you like, and the metal clip is really important actually on the finer sections where there's less hair, to kind of get that hair back towards the root area. We're working on a slight diagonal. It's not 45 degrees, but it's kind of 35 degrees, just to create a little bit more softness. For anybody that's not sure, diagonal lines create softness because the human eye is distracted by the fact that the hair is traveling not in a linear fashion, whether that be horizontally across the parting or vertically across the parting. The human eye is not necessarily going to travel in a diagonal naturally. Once we spot it, we'll see it, but without knowing it was put in diagonally, then it creates that extra dimension and softness. Now when you're doing this top section, this is a great technique, even if you didn't do the rest of it. Here we are with the technique, very, very simple, spatula with teeth on, just to remove the excess. We're going to paint about halfway down the hair, and then as we elevate the hair, we lift the comb as well. That helps to make sure that there's a nice, even, smooth transition of colour as we remove the comb. Because if we just pull out, we can leave a very, very hard demarcation in the hair. You could also wear a glove and use your fingers to milk the saturation further down the hair, should you so wish. In this particular instance, as long as you elevate the section as you remove the comb, you'll be fine and dandy. Once we've done that, I've gone back in, I've done a root stretching technique, but not obviously on the natural level. So I'm using Redken Shades EQ 8GB plus 8N, right down towards the past the parietal ridge, and then I've transitioned that into 10VG plus 10N, and the colour that went in between each of the foils was 7NB Redken Shades EQ, for those of you who are interested. NB is a great shade if you don't want to pre-fill but you want a very, very natural end result. Allowed it to process 20 minutes, manufacturer's recommended development time, and here is the final result. An extremely diffused technique that has removed some of that excessive warmth, created some beautiful, clean, lighter pieces throughout the hair, but equally has left behind a little bit of the warmth in the hair, because I think it's like too much if we go too light through the ends for most people, and having that kind of cool and warm, or kind of beigey and cool contrast within the hair creates beautiful individual tones in their own right, and it really just refreshes the whole thing. My lady was very happy to have her lockdown hair refreshed and redone, and you know, I'm hoping that you guys will be able to use this in your daily lives, week in, week out, and there's a place for some or all of this technique for you to use very, very soon on your own clients. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, remember, be a really huge favor to hit that thumbs up button. Chat to me down in the comments. Tell me if you already use this technique and you enjoy using it. I would love, love, love to know. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you soon.